It's Matterall. Let's talk about EVE Online. Friday, July 31st, 2020. We've reached the end of July, and now we're going to do a little casual show with some friends. Okay, we were just talking about something, and it was yesterday's show. What did you ask, Spod?
I was saying, right, I only caught the last 15 minutes of it so far, so I need to go back and watch it. But is it the show to watch if I want to catch up on what the hell's going on?
I would say no.
No? So what do I watch? Because I don't know what's going on.
Watch somebody else's show, probably. No, you
can't say that.
Oh shoot. Yesterday's show was. Hold on, my light's burning me. Let me turn down the volume on that light. The yesterday's show was a lot of fun, actually, personally, for me. Because anytime I get to talk to friends and discuss ideas and bang around back and forth with them, it's a lot of fun. Which we got to do, right, Caleb?
Did you get your laptop set up yet, by the way?
No, it'll be next week at the earliest. So I can't bring up cams. It's just me.
You have to do a complete reinstall.
Oh, I've installed everything. I just can't use it yet.
Oh, why?
It's still on my son's desk until I replace his.
Okay. So you can't actually grab it from him until you have a replacement.
Yeah. I mean, I could. I am the father after all, but that wouldn't be. He'd be like, can I borrow my laptop back? So, yeah, can't do that. Or I don't want to do that. So I will be able to, on his laptop, since I've tested it, be able to work on Windows, which will allow more flexibility of cameras and all kinds of other stuff. So we'll have more cameras. But right now we do have the little green dots that shows who's talking this time, thanks to Spod.
Yay, Spod.
So people get credit for their voices. So yesterday's show, we didn't have that, but there was basically 3 people talking. Caleb, McLeod,
and you.
and me. That was the third. But then Billy came on at the end of the show.
Yeah, of course. And you could argue that the majority of our listeners would be able to discern and recognize
all those voices.
All those voices.
Yeah.
They're not like they're rare.
Yeah. Because they're all regulars, right? Caleb's a regular, McLeod's a regular, I'm a regular, and Billy's well known. So it was easy to discern who was talking for people who watch our show regularly. But if you weren't, Caleb is here again. He's more a financial, theoretical EVE player. McLeod is in the initiative, and Billy is obviously the leader of Test Alliance. And what was happening yesterday, so I'll bring you back, Spod, was on Wednesday there was a show for Open Comms. It's called some dumb name. I don't even know.
Something Wednesday.
Jabberwocky. Walkie or something. It's supposed to be a take on Trash Talk Tuesday. Let's even back up a little bit so we can talk about this, since we're gonna a little bit of a media reflection here.
And I'm pretty sure I dropped in on Trash Talk Tuesday first.
That's it. Right. Let me explain that. So originally you have Open Comms, which is just kind of like open channel, 4 guys talking about EVE Online. Really heavy EVE talk about what they're experiencing in their lives in EVE. And that went on for years and years. And that ended up developing into a big show, and it kind of fell off the rails a little bit as it grew too big. So, and the chief guy passed away, BC, and, there was some changes. So as it was falling apart, another show came up from Redline, who put it together. A beautiful presentation and pretty good content, really, called Trash Talk Tuesday. That's a recent show that came up in the last, I don't know. I want to say 3-4 months, but it could have been older than that. And And there've been other shows like Pando's, FC chats and that kind of stuff. So there've been shows about EVE Online and stuff that are out there. But Trash Talk Tuesday was kind of like, it was reminiscent of, what was it called? Shit on Tuesday? No, not that. It was called Shit on Kugu or something. It was stuff that is on Kugu, which is like Reddit before Reddit. It's a forum where all the veterans would kind of like snipe at each other and make fun of each other and all that kind of stuff. It was a forum. It was the forum culture at the time. And that was like 8 years ago. That went away. Reddit took over that spot where people went for news and for memes and breaking stuff and breaking news. So Trash Talk Tuesday is kind of like reminiscent of that, stuff on Kugu. So it's like FCs mostly talking shop, but also making fun of each other, which is what happens in Discords, by the way, where FCs are all invited in. They all just kind of make fun of each other and that kind of stuff. Not real planning goes on there. The point is that show comes up, Open Comms says, hey, that's our gig. And so they make up this Wednesday version called Wash Walk. So I don't know. It's a dumb name. Really dumb name. And that was the show they started putting on. So Open Comms usually goes on Friday. They started doing a midweek show on Wednesday. And that's where we're at. So on Trash Talk Tuesday, Caleb, you said you were on that or you
Yeah, I was up and I couldn't sleep. And I basically browsed to Twitch and saw that on the EVE online stuff, Trash Talk was on. And I just tuned in and started watching a bit and reading chat and trying to participate. And then I saw the Discord link and I thought, oh, fuck it, I'm just going to go in and just see what happens and ask a few questions because it was a bit, let's just say there was a lot of spin. So I thought I would maybe go in and see if I could say a few things. Then Brisk basically showed up, and the chat got a little bit dead. Then it picked up again in the end, and Dunk came in. So yeah, it was quite interesting. I was entertained.
So that was on Tuesday.
Yeah, and then it almost repeated Wednesday, because basically Reavers told me that Dirk had asked for me and what the fuck I was doing and why I was not talking in politics. And I just said, well, I have been around. You just only talked in politics and not actually joined Voice. So what the fuck? And he said, well, why don't you drop in tonight? And I said, sure, no problem.
Oh, he invited you in. Okay.
Yeah, he basically pinged for me. And then I dropped in and I joined Cam and had some fun talk with Drayden and Brisk. We talked about the Cybertruck, which was hilarious, and then of course the bicycle gate, where basically Brisk said that all the people that have bicycles in America are fucking upper middle class hipsters.
I guess I besides the hipster part, I ride a bike, and I took great offense to what he was saying. Like, why are they bothering painting bike lanes on the roads? The roads are for cars. And I just thought that is just not forward thinking at all. But whatever.
True. Well, it depends on where you are in America, I believe.
Yeah, we have an obesity problem. It could help if people ride bikes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But you might start by doing a little bit different urban planning, because all those straight lines and massively wide avenues are really not useful and good for bicycles. Your brain just goes to mush, right? If you're driving straight lines like that, it's not fun, and it's not really
right,
safe.
But we're off course, but that's what was being discussed there. And then at the end of the show, what happens? You guys start discussing EVE Online.
Yeah, we kind of got on that topic in the end. We sort of segued into it.
But the key was what was going on with Dirk McGurk, who was getting upset, right? He was getting like irate about I'm getting the
Well,
same vibe I got in 2016 that Goonswarm is saying everything's going great and things aren't going great.
Yeah, he started being really showing that he was slightly disgruntled. I do think that, if I'm not mistaken, Dirk has been slightly absent from me recently, right? He's pretty much been doing his pool thing and not been that active. So I think he's not. He left, quote unquote, a while back, right, where he kind of went on a break, and then he's been half back, but not really. He's mostly back for the social stuff and for open comms. So he was a little bit. He sounded a bit like a bit of it, and started bitching about, "Oh, this is just a rerun, and everything is pretty much the same." And
well, he's reacting to something. One of the things that is good about Dirk is he's honest, very honest about. I mean, what he's thinking, what he's saying. There's a lot of connection there, and I don't know if that's the case with a lot of Eve players that talk on news. There could be. They're feeling one thing, but they're putting up appearances on the other. And that's one thing that I found refreshing was he was saying, this doesn't sound right.
It doesn't feel right. I think he's been back a bit, especially maybe being part of the whole moving shit around and evac-ing, I think. And I think he might be a little bit pissed about that, because if you come back from a break and the only thing that you're asked to do is to fucking move your shit, that's like, oh my god, fuck that.
Oh, that's right. He's in it now. That's where he's.
Yeah. So I think he came back and was actually expecting to be part of the war effort, and then it's pretty much, hey guys, pull back. It's like, fuck that shit. This is just more running away, and I think that's why he's a bit disgruntled and sounded like that.
Right, but I think his complaint isn't that he's running away. His complaint is you can't have all this happy talk while you're essentially collapsing. That's
because he feels like it's a rerun of the Casino Wars, just with a few differences and variation, right? Yeah. Of course, it's geographically completely different, and economically it's completely different, and it's also kind of different groups, right? So I don't see how he can call it a rerun. There's a lot of similarities, but that's just true for most wars.
Yeah, in 2016, for those that weren't here for that war, there was a similar situation where you had the Imperium led by Goonswarm in Decline and Tribute, and basically they occupied the north, and there was a big invasion that came with basically everybody that was not Imperium was invading, kind of like now. And there was some fierce talk, and there was incongruity with what was being said by the Imperium and what was actually happening on the field. And then there was 2 or 3 pitch fights. And then there was pretty much a major retreat to Losec. And I think even back then, and I was working for Imperium News at the time, so was Dirk, somewhat. He was more doing open comms there. But even then, he was saying, like, the rhetoric isn't matching the situation. You can't say, I think Scion's term was, the motto for INN and also the Imperium was, only the best for our people. That was like their motto. That's a fact. That's not an interpretation. And only the best, you can't say that and then have everybody packing their bags and retreating from their homeland. Like, that's incongruous. So
I think this is potentially a very much more serious situation on both sides, right? Because back then it was, the Imperium had completely overextended, right? They pretty much colored the map completely yellow, without really having any intention of actually utilizing any of that space. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly this personal grudge thing comes around to actually rally everyone by using almost a mercenary model with the casino money. And that was what rallied everything back then. And rallying around money and payment is why it didn't, quote unquote, finish. They didn't keep chase, right? They pretty much stopped when the money stopped, and there was at the maximum 2 weeks of money left.
The money was going. I mean, Pro Guy got paid to move Tess down south to Delve to chase the Imperium and to attack them, but it was the unwillingness, not the money, that was
No,
the
but they
blockage.
shut the money off just around the tail end when the finishing moves were supposed to happen, and then everyone just packed up and left.
I don't think so. I think there was still money to be made. I think people would have been paid to go and pursue Goonswarm into Delve.
No, he stopped paying.
No.
Yes, we had him on. The whole casino thing, I want is they all stopped their payments. They didn't have any more money left. They had maybe a week's worth left, right? So they pretty much
pushing that narrative that they were going broke. They said they were going broke.
They said that,
but I don't think they were going broke.
They were. I predicted the amount that they would have left, and I said they have about 2 weeks left. And when we then interviewed them, he said we had 1 to 2 weeks left. Okay. So that sounds like it was actually less left in the coffers than I thought.
Let's have a look at that, because I actually have access to their website. He gave it to me one day, and this is I Want ISK. He gave me access to their analytics, and then he forgot to turn it off. So I have access to their analytics. And I was watching their website. Their website's now dead, right? Because they got banned. People couldn't use them. They're gone. But at the time, I was seeing that they were still making a ton of, well, if you equate, I Want ISK website traffic with money being made, they were still making a lot of money. So them saying they were broke, I don't know if that was completely true. Maybe at the rate they were burning, but the money was still there because ProGod got paid to go south by Lenny.
Yeah, but I think many of the other contracts was not really renewed or paid up anymore, which is why it was not a massive push.
Well, that might be it. Okay, well, we can disagree on that. Why Goonswarm wasn't pursued in 2016. We can actually talk to the people who were a part of that and see why they didn't pursue. But I think it was because they were, they kind of did what they came to do. I think they were not interested in spending a lot of time running across the map trying to chase Goonswarm down. So they let them. I shouldn't say they let them, but that's kind of what it seemed like. They left them alone, except ProGod, who went down there, but nobody helped him out. So it didn't last very long. It lasted like a week or two. And Delve was cleared out very slowly, and I forget why. There was a reason why Delve was not cleared out quickly. Remember, it took them more than a month, maybe a month and a half to 2 months to conquer Delve. It was very slow. They were being very deliberate about it, is what they were saying. Recently, I heard a different reason for that there was somebody interfering with their ability to take stuff over. I think it was Fire Coalition, maybe, or at the time XIX. No, it was somebody else. Maybe it was Test. No, it wasn't Test. Test wasn't there at the time.
My point was that this time it's a very different type of rallying, right? They're not rallied primarily because of money. They're just rallied to actually fight. And I do think that's completely a different scenario. Yeah. That means that the motivation is potentially a lot stronger than it was during the Casino War.
Yeah, okay, so let's bring it back to, instead of arguing the past, let's bring it back. So, and we'll sideline that whole comment of why Goonswarm wasn't chased in 2016, but they weren't. And the fact is they grew into this behemoth and became the strongest power Eve has ever seen if you rate it by Titans. But here they are.
Because then the ban on casino money is really the game changer, right? That's why they then pretty much had a massive comeback and pretty much came back stronger than ever before, and positioning themselves the way they did and the affiliations that they've been making since have given them pretty much 3 to 4, 5, almost 5 years of very, very fat and lucrative grinds.
Well, yeah, so that and the moon changes were a big deal too. What happened is the spigots for money making were turned off for nomadic mercenary type groups. They couldn't make the wealth they were making before. They could rent territory. That was about it. but that was inferior to what Imperium had set up, which was we call it Empire, where the renters were actually part of the alliance, essentially. I mean, if you think about it, and the renters could then be weaponized easier and better than proper renters, who sometimes show up and sometimes don't.
Yeah, and with structures and that whole new gameplay and moon mining, everything shifted a little bit, well, maybe a lot bit, in the favor of the Imperium way of playing the game with massive infrastructure build up and all their systems and all the, well, I think it's slightly offensively called weaponized Aspies, right? It's like they just got really, really good at this stuff, and they utilized their SIGs model in resource gathering and all that stuff, and they've pretty much been harvesting like crazy ever since, right? Yeah. This is something you can go back and then just check the MERs way back. It's like it's been almost consistently the same. Delve has been growing month on month to numbers that are almost in the ridiculous area. This was kind of around when we interviewed Aerith a few times on TIS, and there was a lot of talk back and forth about that whole abundance economy stuff and the productivity and the problems with the raw quills being pretty much almost abusively benefiting goons.
Aerith was, so that people have a reference point here, the architect of the plan to build out the Empire. I think he gets credit for that. But he's also the CFO, essentially, of Goonswarm. And so Goonswarm, through... revenue up. What do you call that when it's grassroots revenue that you're building? It's a tax base, essentially. There's two models, right? There's money that comes into a few people and they trickle it down to everybody through SRP.
This was a variation of a bottom-up model where it's supposed to be that the grazers pretty much put the hay in the attic, right? It's just that's not really what happened because that model never really materialized in the way that I think many suspected it was supposed to enter the game. It was still a bit top-down. It was just more mid-level and semi-big guys doing it, right? You got the mining, moon mining areas pretty much stripped by some of the upper echelons. And of course, then they started doing the thing of requiring that people had Super Titans and raw quills. It almost became like standardized that you have to get into that. But again, this thing of the Imperium demanding these things, it's really more that all the guidelines and all the advice that you get if you start asking about it is this is what you do. This is the recipe for succeeding in the Imperium, right?
So you
get this folder of what to do when you actually start playing.
Sure. Well, what happened was there used to be the model of you corner moons, and those are passive income that you generate. So as long as you control the moon, you control the income coming out of that moon. It's like taking rubber out of a tree. Just put your cup there and it fills it up, and you come back in a week and it's filled up. So you're making money off something that's passively. You don't have to go and fight all the time. But if somebody threatens to take over that tree, then your guys show up and fight, and it's appointment fighting, right? You make an appointment to have that fight through timers that you trigger, and that's how small groups can hold income. And it was lucrative income because all that moon material is what makes T2 stuff. So it has value on the market. And that was it for a long time. And then the opposite happened where essentially Goonswarm and Nullsec said through the Null deal at the end of Dominion Sov, when they wanted to change Sov around 2014-15, hey, we want occupancy Sov. We want to live in your space and profit by doing so with more people. We want empire building. That's the kind of thing that we want. And everybody at the time, the leadership kind of agreed with that, because I think on one side, Goonswarm thought that model will work for us. We have more people than anybody else. And I think on the other side, Vince, who also was a signer to that, said, well, sure, we want people to kill, so let them have this occupancy Sov so we can let them build up so that we can kill them. We have targets.
It rolls back earlier than that. It's really the whole farms and fields argument, and I think it goes all the way back to, was it CSM 6 or something like that, when they started talking about the whole self-sufficiency models, and then they pretty much got that partially. with anomalies first, as far as I remember. And then they got the horrible boost to the Rorqual. Then we had the infinite industry slots on NPC stations because the queue system was removed. And then we got structures that basically inherited exactly the same thing. And then you pretty much have a completely broken and stagnant abundance economy. And that's what pretty much goons came out of their big loss, because I think the war started just before this actually started having a huge impact. These problems did not really show themselves in the massive scaled way that it is now very visible.
You didn't have structures yet. You didn't have keep stars yet that could hold Titans, and therefore the concept of having a defense fleet on standby was different. It was smaller.
And then suddenly you could actually dock your Titans and
in the same
basically
keep star.
park all of your big assets in these private structures, and it was just it was basically perfect storm of how to completely mess up the ecosystem of Eve.
Yeah. Well, before we get too far into that, let's just contemplate for a second. There was a time when in NC Dot, if you were caught running an anomaly with a dreadnought, you were in huge trouble. That was the business of a battleship or smaller. No capitals were used for ratting in that way. It was ridiculous and seen as an absurdity, and it was comedy, essentially. And if you had a defense fleet, it wasn't supers. It might be capitals, maybe, but it wasn't supers. You didn't use those for a defense fleet.
So everything just shifted and changed pretty much after the casino wars, right? The new strategy was completely changed, and you could park all your massive assets. You could do vertical farming on scale. And as we got the numbers from Aerith back then, and I'm still pretty sure that they were not just honest, they were completely honest. Delve was only at a maximum of 60% capacity of what could be actually generated resource-wise. So the whole thing with the umbrella and defense and all of that stuff, everything just was at the benefit of the goon lifestyle.
They had more people. They had more people willing to rat and mine. They figured out that Rorquals begot more Rorquals. So one Rorqual would take you 3 weeks to skill into, and or to buy the injectors to skill into. The second one would take you a week, and the third one would take you 2 days, and then every one after that would take you 1 day, because it was compounding the income to buy you the injectors, to buy you the character, to get the next Rorqual.
Yeah, because of the linearity of CCP's design, which is one of their major flaws, that they don't have a diminishing return design, means that you can just infinitely scale this model. So once you get over the first time hurdle, you can just keep adding Rorqual accounts, and basically then you have the whole SP farming, so it doesn't even cost you anything to have that extra Rorqual pilot running once it's actually paid for. So you have this infinite scalability problem, and that was something that Delve took advantage of massively. So pretty much everyone could get to 3 to 5 accounts each with no effort, and just vertically mine the world away, right? Pretty much just make ISK and resources hand over fist. Yeah,
Prothedge says, is that why super cap hull is 12 billion? And that is because super cap hulls used to be 20 to 24, fit 28 if you fit it up. That's where they were for a long time. And when you had the mining going on with Rorquals, and because all the capitals are T1s, all they need is minerals. So if you have these massive mining ships for normal asteroids, there's nothing special about that. You just need quantity. You don't need any quality or specialization of minerals. Therefore, all that mining could go somewhere, so it went into capital ships. And if you didn't, put all that,
removed all risk, right?
Hold on. If you didn't put that all that capacity, all those minerals, if you didn't put them somewhere, they would destroy your marketplace, right? It would flood your local marketplace. So you needed to take all that and to throw it into something. And supers not only were great defense, but they absorbed a lot of minerals. Therefore, you could keep your prices high by building and building and building and building.
Well, it was also the fact that the slot issue and how you actually build and how it was mostly done with pauses, and that every time you build anything of that size, you were putting your things at risk, right? This is back to the abortion topic. That a lot of supers and titans could potentially be killed before they ever really got finished in build, right? But with structures, that completely changed. You had infinite slot, you could infinitely scale. If you wanted to build capitals, just go for it and just do the same with your industry, as we just explained with the raw mining. Just scale your alt accounts and just make 10, 15 industry alts. And the benefit of that is those things work when you're sleeping. You don't even have to be logged in.
You know, here's where I criticize CCP, and particularly two of my favorite guys, Fozzie and Rise, who, and this is going to sound harsh, it kind of is, but these guys come out of backgrounds of running around doing fleets, especially Rise, who's very much a small gang guy. And these guys create a lot of the ideas that Eve is going on. And so you have to wonder, was their mindset of small gangs let everybody participate? And if that's so, I think they lost the narrative of how to control distorted growth. So everything they were building for smaller guys was being taken by Imperium and magnifying 10 or 15 times and creating distorted wealth.
Everything when it comes to PvP-centric gameplay, when Rise and Fozzie works on it, is actually, in my opinion, really positive. It's just if you apply similar ideologies to PvE, and that means resource gathering and is printing, you completely destroy the game. And I think the raw pool is the best example, but it's almost more the infinite slots, that you have this infinite scalability added with SP farming. It's just a perfect storm, and CCP desperately need to come around and actually fix some of these things. And I know that there's a lot of pushback with people that have grown accustomed to this new normal. It's just it's not good for the game. It makes it really, really flat.
Well, anyway, the point of this entire discussion has been that the model shifted from nomadic PvPers rewarded by intense amount of gambling money was a viable power structure. That was displaced and eliminated when CCP basically outlawed gambling, and when they took away moons, and when they started opening up the possibility of fields and farms in your empire. And that model, and I called it at the time, I said, with gambling outlawed, this means the play style of the Imperium is now the preeminent game style. I think there's an article I wrote about that. They won the new landscape, even though they were smaller and just starting to grow at that time. And they grew for 2 or 3 years, actually. And there were some people who said, yeah, we should do that. But the people in charge of the opposition were like, nope, we're not going to do that lifestyle. Because it took a while for them to realize that what was happening was that they were losing power. And in the meantime, they just kind of said, no, we have alternatives. We're renting out space. We're still rich. We're rich enough, whatever.
Yeah, and the bottom-up-esque model basically also benefits someone that wants to grow in the Imperium way, and maybe not so much the rest of Eve. But the selling point was that it sounded good. It's like when you hear some of the non-Imperium guys talk about these things, they kind of like some of these removals of bottlenecks and things that make life easier. The problem is it's not really quality of life. It is actually dumbing the game down, and it's going to hurt them more than someone like the Imperium, because the Imperium can scale it a lot better than they can.
Well, so anyway, that's what was going on. And people did see it, and this is when we had Arathon, and we talked about this empire, and we knew that it was the best way to win this game, basically. And we even said, look, he's the most influential player of 2017. This was the year after 2016 when they got destroyed in North and came down to the South. They didn't get destroyed, but they got chased out. And they rebuilt it. So within 1 year, we saw like, yeah, this is going this way. Aerith is our most influential player. Watch this space. And sure enough, the next 2 years were just incredible growth when you have this. And now you have this empire. Okay, but we got off track because we were explaining more of the background for people who haven't been here a while. So the show on Wednesday was Dirk McGurk saying, like, I've heard this before, all this happy talk while at the same time you're retreating doesn't make any sense. It's incongruent. And that's what he was arguing about at the end of Wednesday's show. So when we started yesterday, that's kind of where because Dirk and I talk, and he was writing some stuff, and I was like, yeah, I kind of agree with you. And so when we started talking, Caleb and I and McLeod yesterday, that's the reference point that you need to begin that show. And so the first hour and a half of that show is us discussing, like, I think I started hearing the narrative and I couldn't help it. My facial expressions were eyes rolling all the time.
Yeah, there's been comments on that part.
Yeah, I didn't get favorable ratings because I was showing too much emotion when Caleb or McLeod would talk. But these are friends of mine, so I felt comfortable. Spod, you seem to be writing some stuff. Are you trying to get in here? Are we crowding you out?
No, I'm cool. I'm trying not to melt.
Is that a personal thing, or?
It's 36 degrees in here.
Oh, okay, yeah. So that's where we started. The first hour and a half of yesterday's show was me basically trying to fight back what I felt was happy talk about losing.
The problem is that both McLeod and I were trying to be moderate and do analysis on an attempt of being as neutral as you can expect us to be. But you were basically, in my opinion, a little bit too much drunk on some sort of hype Kool-Aid, or maybe it's the fact that you had been in NC for too long. It's like, we are not even in the beginning of what's considered a war, right? We are slowly moving into it, and when even Willy comes in and tells you we're not even in phase 3 out of 5, we're barely done with phase 2. It felt like you didn't even register that. Well, maybe you do now, but it's not that people are happy. It's just that they're not really scared yet. Nothing has happened yet. Fountain has been entered, and the initiative has pulled back, but no real fights have been given. It's been ramping up a little bit now, but that's mostly because of spillover destruction, right? It went from 4 to 5 trillion to now it's about, almost doubled since then. So it is getting there. It's just, it was definitely not visible at the point where everyone was like applauding, and where Trash Talk Tuesday was basically saying that Delve is already conquered. Like, come on, people, you haven't even started.
Yeah, I think anybody celebrating the war is over it's way too early for that. I think what they were trying to do, and this is not me trying to do it, this is what I'm trying to analyze what they're trying to say, is you're not going to say that everything's fine because we just took a region from you and we want to hear your pain. And Imperium guys aren't willing to give that. So they're saying, no, we're having fun, right? It's all about fun. We're having fun. So you're not really hurting our feelings. You're not making us feel any pain.
Nick, that's not fair. That is not fair. It was corrected. It was basically...
You need to say what, because we're on audio.
Well, okay. The whole Fortress Fountain is basically, and he admitted that was Mitten spinning a little bit too hard, right, and he has admitted that twice. Okay. That it was never a fortress. It's not a Fortress Fountain narrative. That's never been a thing. That was basically misspeaking because they were talking about their ability
you can answer it after I read it, but Nick basically says, at Caleb, Imperium can't start with a Fortress Fountain, quote unquote, narrative, and then they say it doesn't matter less than 2 weeks later. That was a pushback on the happy face. That was the pushback the happy face came from.
My typing's bad. Sorry.
There you are, Nick. Yeah,
well, the point is that yes, he said that, and yes, it was complete spin zone, and it was borderline retarded. But that doesn't change the fact that he did actually almost apologetically come out saying, yeah, okay, that was not really what I meant, and I know that Fountain is not a fucking fortress in any way, and historically everyone in EVE knows that is just silly talk. Defending Fountain is just a shit show, and it's never really been done. Everyone that's been attacked in Fountain in a meaningful way has been pushed out.
So has anybody attacked Fountain? Oh, Fountain.
Well, remember, I used to live there under the nice wing of the old baddie, right?
The old baddie is?
Well, I was a renter in Fountain. I lived there under the umbrella of basically Bob, right? Or the Bob that reemerged. I lived there when Sword Dragon gave me a really good deal. I basically rented an entire constellation for fucking peanuts and was supposed to get really filthy rich on it. But it's not a defensible area. It's really shit for defense.
All right. I'm going to... Did you get your question answered then, or did you get a chance to answer that question? Assume you did. Here's a graph that I promised to show you. It just took a while to find it. And what I'm about to show you hasn't been seen before. It is I Want ISK's traffic to their website. And I'll direct you to the dates if I can see them. Let's see. That's their traffic, right? So can somebody tell me when the war was? 2016, right? Yeah. Look at mid 2016. Look at that giant spike. You know what that is? That's after the war started. That's like that's when the war started. Their website started doing more business than it had ever done. Because the people...
Yeah, they got a lot of advertising, right? It got really popular, potentially.
It got really popular because people were like, what's this I Want ISK that's declaring war? This wasn't the Allies. You know who it was? It was the guys being attacked that started going there more often. They could track like who their people were. So I'll just put that here so you can see it. But this giant spike is when the war started, right? And yes, they started losing money consistently after that. But they never got... they were never broke, as you can see. They had over 50,000, I think, is that per day? Let's see. I think that is, 35,000 per day, 40,000, 50,000 per day when they were in this little slump here. At their peak, they were getting,
they would also have attracted a lot of non-playing eyeballs, right? So yeah. I don't think that traffic necessarily generated a lot of added income. And I think if that would have been the case, I'm pretty sure that would have been mentioned in the many talks we had with the owners and the people.
I don't know, but the point is they weren't almost broke or out of money. They were making more money than they ever had after the war began, and they may have said like we were broke or whatever, but they were maybe trying to take the heat off themselves. Who knows? But they ended up getting banned anyway and lost their whole website pretty much. You can see that. I think pretty much that giant dip is when casino stuff was banned, and then they tried to survive a little while after that, and then they finally just called it quits after 2018, which is a full year later. So, yeah, I Want ISK, I don't think, was in huge financial trouble.
They were not in trouble, but they were running out of money to actually support the expenses. So that's really not.
I think they lost interest, and I think they knew that they had hurt themselves by getting political with that ISK, because now there was a ton of heat on CCP doing something about unassailable wealth, which is what it was called. So,
well, it had been discussed for years, right? That it was a bit of an issue. It's just it became an issue when it got politicized. Before that, gambling was not really that big of a topic.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but let's go back to what we were talking about yesterday, which was this ton of facial expressions. Yesterday's show was directed at McLeod and Caleb here because I felt like the war hasn't begun yet. I've never said that it has. The war is not even. It's just barely starting, but it has started, and in that time, most of the victories, most of the progress has been seen by the invading forces. If you consider keeping Test out in the South progress, I guess, then there's progress down there too for the Imperium, because Test hasn't been able to do very much in the South at all. They took over a little space, it got taken back. They did run on Quarius, which was a little embarrassing for the narrative that Quarius was just a pinprick, it doesn't matter. Then like the next day they turn over hundreds of nodes and take over many iHubs. And that's all. The plan isn't, and this is very public, the plan isn't to run over Delve. It's impossible to run over Delve. Delve has probably 80% of the Titans in the game. If they're all on the field at one time, or even half of them, you cannot defeat that. You need to whittle away at that sort of thing. So Delve cannot be overrun. But what you can do, and what the plan is to create a situation that's undesirable to their players, the Imperium players. And that's what they intend to do. So if
I'm fine with the intended, and I have never questioned the plan that Willy has been talking about. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that you can't shoot at my arguments when even the head of the whole war thing is actually agreeing with me. That's just being silly, right? When Willy says the war haven't really started yet, it's just the first preliminary steps. That's because it's not started yet, and the destruction numbers are showing that, and that's all I'm saying. I'm not even hardcore fucking goonsplaining here. I'm just saying this is not a war yet. It's just the preliminary steps towards war.
All right, let's read some comments from people and invite you guys in here to talk if you want to. This is a casual Friday discussion.
If I may.
Sure. This is Nick. Go ahead.
With what Caleb just said, and Willy to a certain point, and I'm going to take slight exception to that, of this, the real war hasn't started. The analogy I'm going to use is, I guess when the Low Countries were overrun in Czechoslovakia, that wasn't the real war yet either. Sure was for the people living there. And I think to the folks who were invested in Fountain, other than the renters and such, and even them, this war has already begun.
True. I completely agree with that. This is like Poland being invaded or the beachhead being taken. The first losses are of course meaningful. I'm just saying this is not something that is considered an Eve war yet, because the destruction numbers are too low. They are getting there, but they definitely haven't been there for the past few weeks. They only got there these past few days.
It may not be main engagements going back and forth, even though there are some rather impressive ones, but it has definitely begun. I'm going to kind of stand on that one. But I do get your point, Caleb.
And I'm hoping that this weekend will be some of the first more bloody fights starting to happen. I hope the push towards the beachhead will actually start this weekend. I suspect that it will. But since it sounded like Willy and the attackers were actually surprised that the withdrawal happened so fast and so meaningfully. So basically they gave up Fountain almost instantly. That sounded like they were surprised at that. So I think they might have had a secondary strategy on what to actually do. But I think now they are going to try and push towards the beachhead and take the rest of Fountain, or at least take as much of Fountain as they can, because they need that last third to actually really be close to a potential ground to actually stand on to take Delve.
Right. So, what is it? Crush 35 there. I call it Crash. Crash 35 says the parallels between this war and World War II, or did he mean World? Yeah, are uncanny. Okay, so he's comparing it to World War II.
Oh, that's a DBLB moment, but
yeah. But I thought he said World War B, and that's one way to talk about the Casino War. World War B was a similar situation with the Imperium holding territory and people coming to displace them. And there are some parallels, but I'll tell you what's different. The exit strategy has to be different, because they were able to drop Sov and essentially escape with most of their big ships.
No route. There's no escape route this time.
Yeah.
There's no effective escape route. The only escape route is basically allowing almost everything to burn, and then asset safety as much as possible, and see if that can actually be used to regrow. But they can't really pull out the same way.
I think the plan has been floated to move to Delve NPC should things get really bad. That's viable, I think. I mean, we should probably have military guys on it. Somebody mentioned yesterday asset safety, right? They can always escape through asset safety. Just manually asset safety your gear, even though it's expensive, and it goes to a low sec station, and then you're out of the arena, and you have to pay a fee, but you get your stuff back. The problem with that is, I believe all that asset safety goes to the station that is very close to Delve, so it can be, well, we used to call it, it can be hell camped just like Delve can. So you can't escape very far with asset safety, and I think
and the liquidity cost would be massive. I don't know if they have that type of liquid, and still, even if they did that, they're still going to get all their infrastructure burned, right? So all their keep stars are going to die in a fire.
Yeah, it's 15% of your whatever you're trying to redeem. So if it's a 100 million Titan, you're going to pay 15 billion. 100 billion Titan, you're going to pay 15 billion on that.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, many of the people that hold things like Supers and Titans have their backups as well. And I think traditionally, guys like that are not liquid to the same amount of their actual assets, right? So I don't even think if let's take someone like one of the FCs, like let's take someone like Boat, right? If Boat was supposed to extract his stuff, I think he would lose at least half, because he would simply not be liquid enough.
Yeah. So Coco says here, Men's already revealed plans to retreat to NPC Delve if they are overrun, and I think he has in stuff that's made public. It's called Fireside Chats, where the leader of Imperium talks to the Imperium for a half hour before the meta show, usually. And then spies will make that public so you can hear what he says. And he knows those are public. So he's saying like, yeah, look, we have a backup plan to go to NPC Delve. Don't worry. It's not a dire situation. But it is going to be expensive, I think, to move to NPC Delve. And at that point, you're in an island, and I don't know like where you go from there. There's a lot on the table here. I just don't think, and the point is, I don't think escape is as easy as it was when Citadels had first come out. Citadels have been tuned now for 2 or 3 years. They don't want to be used as, the CCP doesn't want them to be used as the lily pad of, jumping from one lily pad to the next to skip over water. So they made it, I think it's 30 seconds before you can actually tether, which means they're not safe points to just jump to. There's a lot that's changed. Dreads can now kill supers, but rather quickly. You saw that in 10 minutes, 4 Titans and 4 supers were wiped out when Sado did his mishap. So Dreads can put a hurting fast. So expect to see a lot of damage done if people try to escape. But if they try to stand and fight, well, then we're going to see something, right? What people have not really talked much about is the Imperium clobbering the hell out of Test and NCPL all at the same time. That is a possibility. That is a certain possibility. A couple of
I'm just
big fights, and who knows where this whole
I just don't get these comments, right? The war will be over in 6 weeks. Well, really said that they won't even be in Delve until like maybe in 6 weeks. So you can't claim that the war is going to be over in 6 weeks when they're not even expecting it to be properly starting until 6 weeks out, right? So it's this disconnect of some of the comments and some of the voices, and the fact that there's still people that don't know that the majority of the EVE player base is at least 80% of their nav is in actual ships and material assets. They're not liquid strong. They do not have the ISK to actually do these extractions.
Oh, by the way, Coco.
Yeah, and it's to that 2 week or 6 weeks war over. It's going to take close to 2 weeks just to clean up Fountain.
And then you haven't even pushed to finish it.
Well, I think that push is going to happen this weekend. The cleanup will take next week for sure. There's 4 or 5 keep stars up there. Those are probably certainly going to be lost. I can't imagine a scenario where they're not, and they're really not worth much. As you don't want a Berlin in Germany at this point, so you don't need a little keep star behind enemy lines at this point. All the weight
there's a few things
is coming into Fountain. Go ahead.
It's the server stuff, right? I don't know how many people have actually noticed this, but the servers are shitting themselves more than ever before, and they're actually underperforming.
Really?
So yeah, I think Spot talked a little bit about this. The level of engagement before tie-dye actually kicks in is a lot lower than historically is the case. So if the current build of TQ is more server straining, and we get more massive tie-dye issues and potential dropouts, right? Then is scaling war actually effective and possible? Can we fight a war of this size if the servers are fucking shitting themselves?
I didn't know the server stability was an issue. I thought they had worked on that and tempered it. We'll see. Anyway,
well, of course,
I do want to give hope to Imperium because I'm not trying to down talk them or wreck their morale. I'm just trying to break through some of the narratives that are kind of spun out there. So the Imperium can change the momentum of this war, and they could do it rather easily. They can do it overnight, essentially, by surviving and prevailing in a huge head-to-head fight, which they're very capable of doing. That's the deadly part of this next phase. The reason that Delve isn't overrun, even though Initiative is retreating and Bastion are retreating to Delve to consolidate with the bigger group, is because you don't want to ram that group. You don't want to attack that group straight on. So I don't think that's going to happen. But at some point, there's going to be some key fights that are going to be won by the Imperium. People have to know that.
Well, as Forsyth just pointed out, a legit defensive strategy of just trying to lag the node to hell, that strategy is a lot more relevant than that. There are methods of actually intentionally lagging the node to death, and if you have to fight through all the keep stars in Delve with actual server lag or almost DDoSing yourself as a strategy, that is going to be cancer, and I just don't know if it's going to be effective. Because you can do things with like carriers and anything that does drones and anything that does massive ECM stuff. So anything that's asking the server to do a lot of calculations at once, and there's very evil ways to do that, you can pretty much kill the node, and the fight is going to be horrible.
Yeah. I switched to mod view and it wiped out the chat, so I can't erase some messages. But watch your language, guys. Don't be too brutal on everybody. Yeah, all right. So anyway, the Imperium still has cards to play. They're not in retreat as a whole. They're just moving and consolidating into Delve. It might be a strategy. It might just be what you do when you're overrun. And 2,000 people coming at them is too much. Initiative admitted that as an alliance, they can't really handle a whole coalition of groups. They're outnumbered, so they're retreating. I think one of the things that I saw some criticism about Test is doing nothing. It's all NCPL and Horde doing all the work. And I don't think you're looking at the larger picture. I know that's a narrative that's coming out of the Imperium, saying Test is next, we're going to focus on Test, and making them sound useless at the same time pumping up and making PL and NC sound like they're such heroic dominators of the game, and giving them credit is trying to divide that group, that coalition. It's more psychological warfare. And I don't think it's working, but you can keep trying it if you like. To say that Test did nothing is ridiculous, because when they moved 400 dreads into Hophiv area, they ensured that initiative could not out-escalate them with capitals, with super capitals. They weren't willing to use them when they were losing 50 capital ships. They were not willing to risk super capitals. Instead, they said, we can't take this on. We're going to go back and consolidate with the bigger group where we can take that sort of thing on. So that turned the tide. So a lot of the stuff that Mittens was making fun of, Test saying, these guys, it's amateur hour. They use a Saturday to do move ops instead of doing military actions. I mean, they don't know what they're doing. It bears out that they did know what they were doing. They put the leverage up into the right place. They took the weekend to do it. May have looked silly to the Imperium, but is highly effective.
Well, at the same time, they've had significant forces down on their own front, keeping with these probing attacks, which is tying down significant numbers of Imperium forces just to watch those regional gates.
Yeah, Test hasn't made any military progress. That's clear. They haven't moved into, they moved into Aquarius, so I guess that's something. They haven't taken period basis. They also haven't lost Paragon Soul, so it's kind of a wash. But they definitely did insert themselves into the theater in the north by putting that weight up there. I cut you off, Caleb, but you were saying something.
No, I'm just reading chat, and I'm just getting a little bit depressed at this personal attack hatred that's coming from pretty much both sides for these days. It's like fucking kids' hours. It's like, come on, can we not play this as adults?
Well, I think the hard part, let's assume that the clearing of Fountain goes according to plan. There's only 7 regional gates, if I'm not mistaken, going into Delve. With the Imperium numbers, they're going to be able to cover that pretty damn well. And also the internal lines of communication to get from one to the other is going to be much easier for them than for the attacking forces.
Yeah, they need to get through those, right? They need to figure out how to get that beachhead, and it could be any of those gates that becomes the beachhead. I don't think they expected it to be the Fountain one. That's what I took from the talk that we had with Willie, that he sounded as if he had not expected that there would be an opportunity to actually push that because of initiative. I think he expected a lot more pushback from the initiative and not this retreat.
I don't see why. I mean, the initiative can't take on a coalition. That's just clear, especially a coalition with 400
historically,
dreads.
it would have been the other way around, right? I think really expected it to be that they might have pulled back a little bit, but then the reinforcement would have actually come from Delve. I think that's what he expected, but that's not what happened.
Yeah. Well, in any case, you need to put headphones on, Nick, so that we don't get the feedback, but it's okay. Do you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry about that. I'm running around on a laptop today. It's going to be a long war, is kind of my big thing on this. Ain't going to be fast.
I think everybody now agrees that this is not going to. If you don't, then you're probably out of the loop. But it's very much a slow crawl. But we just saw Fountain collapse. It's going to continue to collapse today. There's some. I don't know if people are going to fight today or tomorrow, but this weekend you should probably. There's a big meeting, or there's a big fleet called, but there's no timers, so it's very curious. It's doubtful it's a counterattack on this. This is Initiative calling this time, so it's doubtful it's some kind of a counterattack. I think it's a move up. So you may see everything that is happening now. That is a massive consolidation into YTAC 2, which is, if you look on the map, southern Fountain on the border of Delve. You may see a giant move up from Fountain altogether into Delve, just completely give up Fountain.
Well, I don't think you're going to see that. I think it's going to kind of get halted at the ass end of Fountain, and they're not going to be able to really push in there. But I do think that you might see some fights down the other side. This is a little bit to what Lord Kalis is saying. When Test will be freed up to push in and take period bases, I think there might actually be some push down in period bases. Because if I'm not mistaken, that's their back door out.
Yeah, so Anthron says Imperium already saved KVN timer in Fountain today. Yeah, they formed up really big. I think they said miss work. I think the quote was miss work for this one. The typical blue balls from the invading forces, they didn't contest the KVN at all. And that's what you see in war, is you see when there's a big form up on one side, when they form big, the other group will say, we're not going to contest that. Either we don't want to go head to head with them on this, it's not in our strategic objectives, or it could be that they're trying to tire out the other guys, because anybody who did take time off or did make plans to show up, that's considered an objective victory, but they didn't get any kills, they didn't get any excitement. And so how many times are they going to do that before they say, like, nothing happened last time, I'm not going to waste 2-3 hours of my life waiting for something to happen, so I'm not going to show up. That's a strategy. You basically, you either blob or blue ball. In other words, you don't engage or you over engage. And that's how you end up breaking the will of the opponents. That's a time-honored strategy. I'm not saying that's a victory for the powers that are invading. Clearly, KVN is saved for another day. But with the momentum swinging the way it is, you have to wonder what that's going to mean in the long run, saving a system in Fountain when you're retreating from Fountain.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, you.
Oh, that's Gian Ball from Providence. All right. Well, that's enough talk about the general war that we're talking about in the South. We were waiting to see if we could have some words about Providence, because there's some stuff going on in Providence. Spot, are you still here? Or did you melt?
I'm alive.
Did Chocolate Bunny? What is going on in Providence? What happened yesterday while we were on the air?
Jen can probably tell you because he was there, I think.
Just give me like 2 seconds.
Go ahead, take your time. I'll do some filler here. Providence, as you know, has been in a bit of flux. The Provi block was under a lot of pressure from Wrecking Crew, which is a combination of alliances sitting in occupying part of Providence. And a few weeks ago, a non-invasion pact was agreed to by both sides. And in that time, they have 2 months. That is, Providence has 2 months, or Provi block has 2 months to figure out what they want to do and to do it. And so a lot of public talks and presentations have been about Provi block actually falling apart and leaving, or part of Provi block staying and keeping up the tradition. And so everything is fluid in this situation. So that's the backdrop to what happens next. And there's some recent developments that were kind of interesting that happened as soon as yesterday. By the way, is Rocket X here? Oh, Rocket X is here. What's up, Rocket?
Yeah, I'm around, man. Just not been home long. Just roasting my nuts off here.
How was your holiday, Rocket?
It's hot in England.
Yeah, it's like 60 here.
Yeah, it's 35 degrees here.
So what's the latest? What's the latest on Providence?
Oh, what isn't there? Where do you want to start?
Let's say the last thing we heard was that there was an NIP and people were trying to decide which way they were going to go. We don't know what their actual decisions were because we saw a lot of things being floated.
So obviously Equi agreed to the NIP, and some people weren't too fond of it. Some people were okay with it, and I pretty much just sort of sat there trying to. Rocket made a coordination channel. We basically just tried to play nice with each other, and actually tried to coordinate the NIP and make it work, which was it's a bit bumpy at the start, but I mean it got going and managed to get stuff sorted. Obviously that. I mean it's still technically ongoing now. However, it's sort of been complicated by other stuff going on in London Provi, and as you know, since it's sort of hard to enforce a Provi, it's sort of hard to enforce a NIP with a coalition that's like actively disbanded.
Yeah. So can you describe what Red Alert is and their relationship to Providence?
So Red Alert initially started within Providence as a sort of group of us that wanted to basically a group of us that had ideas that we wanted to push to an alliance, to a coalition level, but didn't quite have the power or support to do so. So obviously, as I said before, the initial idea was just, like get like a bunch of us that were willing to do those sort of changes, and sort of do it on a smaller scale to try and push it and show that, hey, these changes can work and they do make a difference, and essentially sort of almost be like a breeding ground for new, like, innovative ideas for Providence Block. And although it does sort of almost, I mean, in the context of Provi Block, it does almost sound a little bit like a sort of power grab. However, we did basically everything we possibly could to ensure that everyone understood, hey, like, this isn't us trying to gain power, this is us trying to push changes that we haven't been able to push on a coalition level. So it's more born out of a group of us having the same sort of ideas and not being able to do it on a larger scale.
Right. So this is, I guess it can be described as like a special interest group or a SIG, because a combination of different alliances that are participating in the Red Alert group.
Yeah, so as of, well, I mean, so currently there's TMOC, so Two Maids, One Chalice, Sorry in Advance, Total Eclipse, and Apocalypse Now. I can just quickly check the channels to make sure I'm not missing anyone. Yeah, that's it at the moment.
The odd part is that really, I mean, it could only really be considered a SIG because, like, probably like CVA leadership refused to actually support it coalition-wide. Because originally it was like a set of ideas. I mean, obviously we have a lot of spies, so we kind of knew what was going on fairly quickly after it kind of became a thing. But Red Alert for us really just was a group of kind of proactive, like up and coming, future star FCs in the same way that we discussed previously, that had these proactive ideas and wanted to do like coalition level SRP rather than just each alliance relying on their own income, which like varied massively and was completely unsustainable. So they had this idea to kind of like almost like nationalize everything and go from there really. And it would have been kind of a very positive thing for Provi Block, but CVA's leadership just considered it a power grab and refused to support it completely.
So they were never really comfortable with it.
Yeah, that was the thing, and from that really kind of set the rift in process from my perspective anyway. And it meant that it cut. What happened is basically EQ cut everyone but CVA and Severance out of the kind of talks and negotiations and discussions on what was going forward. So like we were finding, like Wrecking Crew was finding out intel about what CVA and Severance were doing next before any of the other Provi holders like T-Mark-T, etc., and even APOC, who'd been there for over a decade, right? And we knew through spies before their kind of, their leadership did, which really isn't the way it should work, right? Like, I shouldn't be able to give Gian or Twilight or anyone else information that they don't already have about their own coalition at that level.
Well, yeah, it'd be kind of embarrassing if enemies giving you the information.
It was sort of discouraging getting messaged by Rocket asking about something CVA is doing while we're sitting there going, that's the first we're hearing of it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So there was always a little bit of tension between Red Alert, which might have been a modernizing movement in Provi Block.
Well, I mean, the thing is, obviously, to remember with Red Alert is, I mean, as I said, like, it wasn't a power grab of any kind. I mean, in fact, literally the first thing we did once we actually, because Alasas essentially talked to a bunch of different people and sort of grouped us all together as a bunch of people that might be willing to work together, which spot on. And after he basically got all the shit that we wanted to get sorted out and all of the ideas agreed upon and the name and everything, we decided that first order of business. So talked to Equi, talked to a bunch of other people explaining what we're doing, like what we want to do, etc. And we did like a whole Providence-wide public meeting, which I can grab a SoundCloud link to in a little bit. And we basically just explained to everyone, hey, this is what this is born out of. This is what we're doing. Like, no, this isn't a power grab. Like, these are the sort of ideas that we're looking to try and implement, and essentially did it as open as possible. Everyone had an open invite. No one was excluded at all.
So why did they think it was from their perspective? Why do you think they thought it was a power grab?
If I'm being brutally honest, I don't necessarily think they saw it as a power grab. I think they saw it as, not a direct power grab. I think that they, judging by how we've seen leadership operate in the last week or so, I'm pretty sure that they probably just more saw it as power taken away from them, but not in the sort of way where we're trying to actively usurp their position, more so in, hey, like, if they're doing this and like they're improving this and this, then that means we have less of a say here.
Almost in kind of like a way where it was like, oh, it's a really good idea, but it wasn't our idea, so we're not going to support it. Was the impression I got.
Yeah, I mean, we got that. I mean, there was multiple people within CVA that were really on board. Like, I know Serene worked with us constantly. He's one of the junior FCs, and he was always coordinating ADM fleets with us. Now, obviously, bearing in mind that a lot of the ideas that we had with this, aside from the coalition SRP that we had in mind, it was purely beneficial things for Providence. So, I mean, one of the main things was, hey, like, let's get regular Locust fleets up. Like, let's go around Provi. If there's any low ADM systems, we rat them up. Like, make sure all the stuff is secure. Like that was like one of the ideas. Like, obviously mining fleets, like nationalizing any moons that we owned to, get member income in and all that fun stuff. Like, all the ideas that we had were solely focused around improving Providence and securing it.
Mm-hmm. But because it wasn't theirs, they might have seen it as a threat to their own legitimacy leadership.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I can't exactly speak to what they were exactly thinking, simply because obviously I'm not them, but I'm speculation.
Yeah, that's what I asked for, speculation. But in your opinion, what do you think it was?
There was that comment by Equinox after it all kicked off yesterday that, for at least from what I was reading, felt like he was pointing the finger at RA, at least to some extent. I mean, over the last day, apparently everything is all John's fault, and John is apparently playing both sides and all that fun stuff.
Sorry, who's John?
Which, me.
Him. Oh, okay.
Yeah, apparently I'm an evil dictator. He's playing both sides, and I've ripped apart Robbie from the start, and that's all I ever do. Which is exactly why, I tried to do everything I could to,
And you're one of their main FCs. You're one of Provi Block's main FCs. if not the main FC.
Well, and not the. I mean, that would probably be Arc, but like, I mean, I haven't been as active in terms of like FCing in the last like ever since I SD'd my Titan for obvious reasons. But yeah, like beforehand, I was constantly running fleets and all that sort of fun stuff. So I mean, I was in most of the OPSEC channels. But yeah, I found that it's probably just more of a finger pointing excuse because yeah.
So what? So when you said John, it's Gian. Is what you were saying? Okay.
Yeah, Gian, John, whatever.
Gian, John. Okay.
Yeah, so like with this, say for example, with this snuff Fortizar.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So
this is yesterday's, right?
Yeah, so essentially, so when we started evacing, like, well, obviously there was a big rift in leadership chat over us, over Providence requesting Snuff help and like accepting it and all that sort of fun stuff. Because I know for a fact that Snuff isn't really a group that you should be working with. It's for the simple fact that we've been looking for long-term allies that can actually support us in a sustained war and actually commit to our values. And one of the things that the leadership completely failed to grasp is, yes, Snuff is a big group that can project well above their own weight, and they're incredibly helpful when it comes to shooting RC. But at the same time, you sort of alienate yourself from basically all of Eve that hate Snuff. And the thing is, Snuff isn't a long-term ally. They're going to move on as soon as content gets dried up, which is precisely what happened last time. Because as soon as they, I mean, like the whole thing is like, oh yeah, you know, we'll use Provi to bait RC. If RC don't drop, then we'll give it a few weeks, raise the war zone, and then move on. And I mean, like last time, I mean, it pretty much drove Siege Green to Wrecking Crew because essentially, about 2 or so years ago, Siege Green was actually more on the Provi side of the conflict, and whilst we were sort of playing around, like idolizing Snuff because they hit the Command Keep star, which I tried to tell them that we wasn't going to die because, well, obvious reasons, like so many fucking bat phones. I tried to explain to them, hey, look, you've got one of your like low-sec allies here, Siege Green, they've helped you on a few timers. They're currently getting their faces absolutely smashed in by Snuff in low-sec. And while they're having that done to them, you're sitting there fucking idolizing Snuff, being, oh yeah, I want to drop Supers and Titans with you. Like, yeah, let's go hit a Keep Star together. Which of course, in the end, completely drove Siege Green to say, okay, fuck it, why are we allied with Broy? Like, and then obviously, I'm assuming Rocket just did the simple, hey, come with us and we'll defend against Snuff with you. Which, yeah. That was that, and then after that, of course, the spin happened. Oh, RC is paying Snuff. RC is paying Siege Green. That's why they flipped. All the while, I was just face palming, sitting there like, okay, well, I did warn you this would happen, and you didn't listen. But okay. So,
is there any truth to Wrecking Crew paying Siege Green?
No, of course not. So, I mean, the thing is, Siege Green, so originally they started in Winterco, right? And they're back in Winterco now, but back then Winterco wasn't really in a position to support them in their fight against Snuff, and Snuff was kind of their forever enemy, right? So it meant that Winterco wasn't, although a good ally to have if you were a nullsec at the time, couldn't really do a lot in lowsec, in the middle of lowsec, right, in around faction warfare space. So realistic for them, Wrecking Crew made a better choice of ally in the first place. But what basically happened was Siege Green came to a few timers, didn't really get any kills on us. We kind of like waterboarded them on gates a few times with their caps, and they couldn't get to us, and we jammed systems and that sort of thing and played it that way. They didn't really get many kills that way, so we kind of expected them to kind of lose interest and stop engaging us, and then the whole Snuff thing happened. As Gian said, like it basically meant that because Siege Green and Snuff hated each other, or rather Siege Green certainly hates Snuff. I don't know if Snuff cares either way, but I would assume they do. I would assume it's mutual. But yeah, I mean, so the end result was that Siege Green was like, well, Provi, why the fuck are you working with our enemies all the time? And Provi's leadership completely denied it was happening until it became super obvious it was happening. And then obviously that pissed Siege Green off, because not only were they working with their enemies, but they were also lying about it as well. And then Siege Green at that point dropped Winterco and said to us, well, we had allies of convenience, but we need useful allies that can attend our timers and back us up. And we fulfilled that role. And obviously, Siege Green does the same for us and shows up on timers when we need them. And the thing is as well, like, the Koreans are absolutely amazing. Like, Siege Green is an incredible alliance in the sense that, like, if you give them a few days notice and you tell them you've got a timer that's at 3 a.m. their time, if it's an important one, they'll show up. And by show up, I don't mean they will send a few people. I mean, you'll have 140 Korean dudes sitting there ready to shoot shit in max, right? Yes. Like, not many other kind of nationalities of people do that. And Siege Green is like a powerhouse ultimately.
Yeah, I think it's fairly safe to say that if Provi had actually, if the leadership had actually listened and not pissed away that ally and actually supported them, I think Provi could be in a much different situation right now. Because obviously, if we had the powerhouse of Siege Green like with us, and if we actually supported each other, like that could have completely turned the conflict on its head.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is as well, bearing in mind that if after the Keepstar repaired, I said to EQ, like, oh, if it was your Keepstar and Snuff shot you, we would have defended you, even though we shoot you normally. Like, EQ wasn't having any of it and was like, oh yeah, I find that unlikely, etc., etc. And the conversation went in a direction that meant that wouldn't happen moving forward. So we were then in a position where it's like, well, okay, we're prepared to kind of have this kind of frenemies sort of thing going on. If you don't want to kind of negotiate with pirates, which is kind of the way he put it at the time, then we really have no further conversation to have. And I'm going to enforce consequences, which is why Wrecking Crew went from let's drop a few blops to actually forming subcap fleets and going for escalations and doing more kind of offensive, actually offensive and territory offensive actions against Provi. Had they not sided with Snuff on the Kamal Keepstar timer, even if they just stayed out of it and not helped defend, we wouldn't have cared and we wouldn't have made the effort that we did to make things so difficult for them. So this stems right back to like a year and a half ago now, where all this kind of political chain reaction got put in place. And, there are people in Provi that recognized it for what it was at the time and said, hey, this is perhaps not the best idea. And Jian was one of those people. And I think generally a lot of what you see with Red Alert now is those other people that have realized that was a kind of like a blunder in terms of political and leadership of CVA. And it was something that they now don't want to repeat. And so the worst part about, and the reason it spiraled so much and everything exploded yesterday was because of the Sasala fort. So, Provi's like split, obviously, as you know. CVA is going to Placid as far as we can tell. Not all the corps want to go and work with Snuff. Some of them want to stay separately in Placid and not work with Snuff and somehow expect not to die to them. No idea how that's going to work, but that's on them to figure it out. Obviously, I don't expect it to work, and it's probably going to work just as well as their previous plans did, but we'll see, right? So yeah, Snuff shooting the Sasala fort, which is RA's evac structure. And Jian was basically, Provi is CVA is telling everyone that Jian was asked to provide a list of structures so that they could be given to Snuff and they wouldn't shoot him, but that never actually happened. The only thing was that Dunn, I think he said, let me know, right?
Yeah, I looked through all the logs I had of all channels, and all I could actually find was Dunn saying, hey, if any of your shit gets like shot, just tell me and I'll I'll try and talk to them.
So you never got a request then beforehand to say.
From what I know, I never actually received a proper request for a list because, at the end of the day as well. I would have thought that sort of thing at the very least. I'm assuming if they are so insistent on saying that they did. There's a chance that they might have posted it in a channel somewhere, which is fucking buried under loads of other shit. But my main gripe with it is, if they were serious about that sort of offer, why would they not actually directly messaging me or pinging me about it?
Well, there's the other stupid thing here as well, right? Like, even if you didn't give them a list, that fort is in your fucking alliance, right? So if there was a list, that one would surely be on it, and it doesn't take anyone with any kind of brain power to work that out.
And another confusing thing is, it was often said by CVA, like obviously after we just went over all this shit about the initial time stuff came around, obviously we saw the amazing backlash of that, and then obviously they come around again like a few weeks ago, and we have this exact same conversation in leadership chat, and it gets ignored again. Now, the problem is here they were insistent that like Snuff is just here to shoot RC, don't worry. Now, as Rocket here can tell you, the Sasala Fortizar just so happens to have a Siege Green Fortizar, which of course is RC aligned, on the same grid. Now, the thing that really confuses me is if Snuff is here to shoot Wrecking Crew, why would they come and shoot a Provi Group's evac structure when there's literally a fucking Wrecking Crew Fortizar on the same grid? It just really does not add up at all.
Yeah, so I mean, this has really spiraled because essentially you've got CVA who wants to work with Snuff and has no control over them and no say in what they do or don't do, despite the assurances they've given to RA. RA stuff is getting shot and by Snuff, and CVA is basically saying you can't defend yourselves. And obviously RA's leadership, and I know Jed's has been very vocal about this as well, they're asking us not to defend ourselves, then like fuck it, we're going to anyway. It's not who we are, and you know, credit to them for that. I mean, these bearing in mind, right, these are people that like have been part of Proviblock, and we have been on opposite sides of this conflict for the last like several years. So for it to come to a situation where Wrecking Crew is helping defend RA's structures, and they are helping us shoot Snuff structures, like, was never something that any of us really saw coming. But it's because of this weirdly kind of divisive, like, door hitting you on the way out sort of attitude that EQ's taken with the dissolution of Proviblock as a coalition. And it is really disheartening to see, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are like quiet, not necessarily shook up, but they're quiet, well, disappointed and just like really like surprised at like all the shit that's happened. As it's been an absolute fucking mess, and it's just like fingers pointing everywhere. Like, for example, today in Slack, they've basically just been sitting there saying, "Oh yeah, this is all John's fault." Yeah, like all he does is like want to divide Provi, like that's all RA is, and all that sort of stuff. One of the things that like I've been accused of behind closed doors was the whole drama with with us going to shoot the Snuff Fortizar with RC. Now, the important thing to actually note with this, that's being pinned on me. However, the RA leadership meeting that actually decided that, I wasn't actually a part of, simply because the meeting was arranged. I had been up for about 20 hours and I basically just passed out and went to sleep. I mean, if you want, I can literally just post you pings from the channel where people are just pinging me to get online because I'm missing the meeting. Because essentially I missed that meeting where the decisions were made, and all that happened was I logged in the morning, someone basically filled me in. I was like, okay, I guess I'll FC then. If you check the public channel in general, Twilight was the one that pinged the fleet. And if you give me 2 seconds, I'll also...
Yeah, the discussion wasn't... So I obviously got involved after that discussion took place, and it was like midnight our time, right? So you weren't even around, you were asleep.
Yeah, so if you check that, the one that I just posted as well, that's literally them pinging me, asking where the fuck I am.
Who'd you send it to, me?
So yeah, so I'm being accused. So I was accused of making the decision and spearheading this thing when I wasn't actually online when it was decided. Which just really goes to show the extent of the delusions that CVA leadership are just pushing now. Like, it doesn't seem like they're even trying anymore. It's just a simple case of, okay, we need to pin all this on someone and try and save face, which is really fucking disheartening. Like, I've always had disagreements with leadership and probably, and I mean, for the most part, I mean, everyone's tolerated it for the simple fact that Equi's usually been fairly chill when it comes to like people like discussing shit, and just being fairly chill about people getting heated. But, you know, like, after all I've done, or haven't done in their case, I haven't done in their eyes, it's really disheartening to see that they're trying to pin every single thing on me. I mean, if they really want to do that, then okay, I guess that's cool. But it's not cool.
It's taking you by surprise. Okay, so
Hello.
So
Hey, Marv.
Is there anyone? Because I want to make this potentially a bit more balanced, if that's all right. But like, who can we ring on the CVA side to come provide their side? Because I'm not very familiar with what they've said, apart from essentially secondhand through the RA side of things.
Part of the problem is that the people actually making the decisions don't seem to be willing to appear on any kind of, like, they don't want to appear on any kind of platform to discuss it in public, is the thing. So all you'll get is like stand-ins and people that can't say anything or don't know anything. Unfortunately, I know, like, Kyle Saltz jumped on last time.
Kyle Saltz
Jumped on last time, but I mean, and you know, he did a good job of trying to answering the questions that were put to him. But realistically, a lot of the questions that were being asked, he didn't have the answers. Even if there were answers, he didn't have them. So he had to kind of run with what he knew and what he was allowed to say. But I don't know. It's going to be. I would like to think someone from CVA could jump on, but
is Twilight Winter from CVA?
I don't think you'll get the kind of level of, like, the authority that needs to be there to actually say anything that adds to the conversation.
Is Twilight Winter from CVA?
No, he's not. He's from Red Alert.
Oh, he's Red Alert. Okay. He says, I can confirm the decision was made by Jeds and I. No one else was awake. I don't know if that's an answer to the...
Yeah, Jeds is the APOC CEO.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, Marv...
God damn it, Marv.
You're now in Fed Up, right?
I guess you could say you got fed up.
For a couple
you guys have got so you guys have got the timer for this your evac force, all right? That's tonight.
Yes. Soon.
Is that
PM.
Is that the armor timer, or is that?
That is the armor timer. They have hit it before. They hit it the other day, but we formed up with Siege Green and they just sort of logged off because we had, well, a surprisingly high amount of people on for an 80 time zone timer. But yeah, they hit it again pretty much straight after.
Are we expecting CVA to turn up to this? So I know they turned up last night when you were knocking down the snuff fortizer, but they didn't get involved, did they?
So obviously, since I'm not really in CVA, I can't exactly say exactly what they're doing, but I've heard that they're staying out of it or something in good faith or whatever. Granted, it's a bit too late for that, but okay. I mean. But yeah, I mean, we're still trying to figure out what's actually happening.
It sounds like you're saying that there's no real likelihood of reparations, and you're not going to make up and be friends again.
I mean, like this is the thing. I mean, as we pinged the other day, which I should probably explain. Essentially, before so when our Fortizar initially got attacked by Snuff. We basically tried to discuss with CVA, like, hey, look, now you're bringing Snuff or whatever, but like look around, like, Snuff is just some, like, month at a time booty call. Like we've been your allies. I mean, I personally have only been in Pro for a few years, but there's been, like, the APOC, for example, has been allies of CVA for almost a decade, and we're basically just begging at this point, hey, look, we've been allies for a very long time. Like, I know, like, we know this isn't exactly going smoothly right now. However, you know full well that this is our evacuation Fortizar. Like, can you please, like, either talk to Snuff to, like, deal with it, or don't at least help us defend it. Which, from what I hear, didn't exactly go well. I know that Jeds was up till the early hours in the morning with Equi trying to sort it in. Well, it didn't get sorted. So the following day, we basically just tried to build. Was at a point where there was literally nothing else we could do. So we basically just tried to appeal to the members of CVA and said, "Hey, look, this is what's happening. This is what has happened. Like, stuff is hitting our staff. Like, we're allies. We do not want to shoot it. Like, we're not here to shoot any of you. Like, we're blue. Like, we're friends. Like, all that fun stuff. Like it's just." And which basically is saying, like, look, we just urge your leadership to just reconsider their decisions. If you check in general, Spot just linked the ping. It was essentially just a beg for leadership to reconsider and like affirm that, hey, look, we're in RDS. Like, if we want to try and help save what's left of our coalition, like, please reconsider. And so after that ping was sent, about 10 seconds afterwards, it was deleted. And then after a short spout in Chatter, which is the public Slack channel, we all got removed from Slack.
Oh, you get removed from Slack?
Yeah.
And yet again, our CVA spies are telling RA what's happening because, we can still see. And the stupid part is they've kicked out the people that were genuinely their true friends and wanted to make things work. On our C side now, obviously, we always plan to hunt Provi on all sides, on RA and CVA, as they evacuated out of Provi, because they basically have to fly through Derelict or in the vicinity of within range of us to get out, right? And then it's just like the concern really was that RA's stuff was being shot, so they then potentially would lose their evac fort, and that strands them in 9UI. And if they defend that fort right against snuff or shoot snuff stuff, then what happens if EQ or CVA decides to pull the rug from under them and nukes all their access, and suddenly all their shit is stuck in 9UI? Like, what kind of position is that to leave your friends of decades in, right? It's just not on. And it's something that RC kind of turned around and said, okay, well, they have been hostile to us, and in some ways they still are, but this is just out of order, and we can get involved here and defend that fort and make things a little more reasonable, because although we're opponents, we don't hold any malice against the members of RA or CVA really. But the kind of conduct that we've seen at a political and leadership level from CVA, it's really just appalling, like what they've done to their allies recently. And it's something that we kind of stepped up and said, okay, well, we'll step up here, and no matter what happens, no matter how this turns out, what direction you take, CVA takes, what RC does next, we're never going to put you in the position that CVA has put you in now. So here we go, let's go do this, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it just sort of almost feel like it's come full circle at this point for the simple fact that we've seen or we've heard of it happening before, like mistreatment of allies, and they push them away, and they go fly over RC or something. Like, we've all heard the stories and we've seen them to some extent, but we never expected after all being allies, basically half the coalition at this point in a red alert. We never expected that allies on that level would be pushed out within such a short amount of time.
All right, let's actually just reframe. Marv, I know you're here. We'll give you some chance in a second, but let's go back and reframe for people who are trying to catch up and have some requests to kind of say, can you recontextualize? In other words, explain like I'm 5 what's going on here in the last month or two in Provi block and what's led to recent events. Anyone do that?
Yeah. So essentially,
just like
previous. So essentially previous stuff with snuff that sort of left us in a not so great position. Sort of got brought back up after they came back, combined with a lot of sort of mistreatment of allies and sort of neglect of duty to the actual coalition members. And this has essentially all culminated to the last 2 or 3 weeks when tensions have been running high. Providence as a coalition has sort of disbanded, and after which obviously we went to Red Alert, which is our own coalition at this point, and we've basically just been shafted out of CVA for trying to defend shafted out of sort of the old Providence as friends for trying to defend ourselves from an ally that Snuff brought in. Not Snuff brought in, CVA brought in.
All right, let me try a even explain like I'm 4 years old version, and that is you have Provi Block, which is a group of people who hold Providence and have for a very, very, very long time. Occasionally they get knocked out, but most of the time they kind of stay there. And they seem to be suffering from internal strife. There's a group, a modernization movement called Red Alert that's is doing some things to make them more, I guess, in tip-top fighting shape, like sharing SRP between alliances so poorer alliances can replace ships as fast as richer alliances in the CVA area. Sorry, in the Provi Block area. CVA may have seen this as a threat to their own leadership of the area, because CVA has always been in charge of Provi Block as the lead group there. So now you have 2 factions inside of Provi Block, and they're starting to not communicate very well. At the same time, pressure from Wrecking Crew being there and farming Provi Block has created a situation that is bad for everybody in the Provi Block area. So an NIP is struck with the help of Vili from Test Alliance. Wrecking Crew doesn't want to see Provi Block disintegrate. So it says you have 2 months to kind of like, get it together, figure out what you want to do. We'll stop thrashing about your stuff. And that is the overall context of what's happening. There's some complicating factors in that CVA has aligned itself, it looks like, with Snuff in order to fight off Wrecking Crew. And Snuff is a wild card. They kind of do things the way they want to do them without a lot of regard for diplomacy. And so they attacked a red alert structure. There was some conversation about, well, it wasn't on the list of things not to be attacked, so Snuff went ahead and attacked it. And that is not believed by Red Alert, who thinks like, no, that's just Snuff acting like Snuff, and now CVA is in a tough position where they have to back up Snuff's play against their own brothers in Red Alert. And that's caused a lot of tension. Does that sound pretty much what's going on here?
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty decent summary.
Okay, so now you're all caught up on what's going on. Marv, you just got here. You're from, are you from CVA or former CVA? Or you're from Apocalypse Now, right?
Kyle.
I'm from Apocalypse Now.
That's right. Sorry, is Kyle here too? Did I miss something? Oh, Kyle's here from CVA. Okay. So I'm sure that people want to hear from CVA's perspective what's happened in the last few days. Can you tell us?
Yeah, I could do a quick rundown. Well, starting, if we go like a couple weeks back, there was some miscommunication between some of our people as well as some people in RA. I sum it up to maybe personality differences that they couldn't accurately tell them what was happening. The point, person A tried to tell person B, hey, give me a list of structures that you don't want to be hit by Snuffed Out. We will transfer this to the other person. Now, did they articulately say this? Not really. Person B didn't understand completely, so didn't give them the information. Now, Snuffed Out originally hits this structure. It's a mistake. They didn't realize who it was. Now, some additional fallout, drama, they come back and hit it again. Now, as far as putting CVA in a hard position, I don't really see that. Well, and this is why. We're not going to attack RA. CVA is not going to attack RA. As far as last time I checked, APOC, Total Eclipse, all these guys, they are Provi Block. They are family. They're blue to us. We will not attack their structures. Now, this is a Diplo nightmare, absolutely. And, I mean, if I have to get out of my own pocket and give these guys a structure because Snuff blew it up, I'll do that in a heartbeat because, hey, they're our allies. Now, to say that we're going to split up and fragment, I mean, hey, it's a Diplo nightmare, absolutely. But I don't believe... I mean, if both sides go to it, the reality of the situation, I think there's a term, a Gregorian analysis, which is pretty much you have both sides seeing what's happening, and they're going to take their own point of view. Of course, RC guys are going to see what they want to see. You'll have Pravi guys are going to see what they want to see, and there's a truth somewhere in between this.
Sure. A lot of gray area here.
Can I just ask a question?
What's up?
If we're seen as allies, then why did CVA bring a group in who then shot our staff, and why did you, our allies, refuse to help against Snuff, who's shooting your allies, and why did you boot your allies off of Slack when they asked for help?
Now, is this on your guys' 40, or is this when you guys tried to kill the snuffed out 40?
I'm talking about what's happening right now, dude.
Absolutely, right now. Are we forming right now to kill your guys' 40?
Dude, it doesn't matter if you're not forming. The fact is, you brought a group in who are now attacking your allies, and you've booted your allies off of fucking Slack for asking and like trying to reason with you, and you're not even going to back up your allies despite sitting here trying to claim that we're allies.
And the people that are helping back up that fort are your enemies.
It sounds like Kyle's... Oh, you got some static there. Sounds like Kyle is stuck between allies because allied...
Yeah. Also, something else that I said earlier about the about the supposed asking me about structure list. So I mean, you yourself said that they meant to say like, oh hey, can we have a list of your structures? Did they articulate that? No. Then okay, how is that any sort of? I don't get that. How is that on anyone but CVA then?
Brother, like I said, it come down to the individual that was talking to you probably did not articulate properly, and I think he didn't articulate at all what you're claiming he tried to do. He straight. Let me get the quote. Well, I'll find the exact quote, but paraphrasing, he said, "Let me know if Snuff shoot any of your staff, and I'll talk to them." That isn't, "Hey, give me a list of your structures and I'll make them immune." Not in any way is that the same.
There's between not articulating something and saying something entirely different, and
then trying to claim differently afterwards to cover your ass.
Oh, I understand wholeheartedly, and this is what is being told to me. And did they articulate it properly? I don't believe so. I'll be honest with you, Gian. It's a messed up situation, both on either side. I chalk it up to personality differences between both people, and it's a travesty. I think, me personally.
No, it sounds like from what Carl's saying that like that was their intent, even if it wasn't what was said. Is that right?
Yes. But it's just now, it is the way it is now, and it's an unfortunate thing. It's a tragedy. I think it's an absolute travesty what's happening right now.
Also, you said it was a misunderstanding the first time Snuff shot our 40.
Yes.
Could you please explain to me how Snuff shooting a Provi block Fortizar is a misunderstanding? Bearing in mind, this was when Teamlock was still completely blue and everything. This was still a complete. Yeah. Everyone knew that we were evacing to that Fortizar because we quite clearly announced it multiple times. So how exactly does it get misunderstood that is a Provi block Fortizar?
Brother, what I was told was the first time they hit that was that it wasn't a legit misunderstanding. They said, "Okay, our bad." Now, moving from that,
again, like it was said that they're supposedly here to shoot RC. There's an RC Fortizar on the same grid. Why did they look at that grid, say, "Hey, look, there's a Provi block Fortizar. There's an RC Fortizar. Let's shoot the Provi block one"? Why was the RC one not the fucking target?
Sorry, do you think you're being targeted, Gian? Is that
it's quite fucking obvious, isn't it?
Because they attacked your Fortizar, but not the Wrecking Crew Fortizar.
Well, it's a simple. Actions speak louder than words, dude. If they say, "Hey, Snuff is here to shoot to shoot RC structures," and we're assured that, hey, they're not here to shoot any of our structures, you'll be fine. And then the first thing that fucking happens is Snuff shoots our structure when there's an RC Fortizar on the same fucking structure. Like how does that look to? How does that personally look to you? Like, what would you think of if you're in my situation, Matt?
Oh, absolutely, looks bad. I mean,
before you go on, let me just contextualize you for the audience so people that don't recognize your voices can understand that we have three people here, essentially. We have Gian, who's talking. He's from Red Alert, which is, we'll call it the modernizing part of Provi Block. We have Kyle, who's from CVA, and so he's the traditional CVA, Praviblock. They're allies and have been for a long time. And we also have Rocket X here, who's the leader of Wrecking Crew that sits in some occupied space in Providence, a different coalition who's been in a low-grade farming or war situation with Praviblock in general. So there's three people here that you're listening to. And next is Kyle. Go ahead.
All right. This is, you know what? I'll be honest with you. This is how I'll view it, or I'll analyze it from a Snuff's point of view. When Snuff first came in here, not everyone knew what their intent was. Some of our high leadership understood what their intent was. Gian tried to form a fleet in Praviblock to try to go kill an anchoring citadel. We knew that they were here to help us. He probably wasn't given all that information, so he's trying to ping and try to form a fleet to kill it. Now, we had to tell him to stand down, and we formed a fleet to go defend it. Now, upon doing that, that put kind of like a bullseye on Gian. I'm going to be honest with you. Them claiming it was an accident, this is what they're telling me, and after this, what happens? Just human nature, I believe that they wanted some type of payback. That's me personally. So don't even quote me.
So you yourself admit that you don't even think it's a misunderstanding. You think it was a target thing.
He's an opinion as well, so bear it in mind.
Well,
that's fair enough.
I mean, it's okay. I can only tell you what they say. This was an accident, first time.
No,
okay.
No. Why are they not on the show actually debating this?
Because Kyle's got stones.
Who? Kyle, thanks for coming. Who's they, by the way? Who are you talking about?
He's referring to the people that actually made the call. So Equinox, Chotar, and
the leaders
Adita.
of CVA.
Yeah. I mean, Kyle's talking on their behalf, but it's like he can only tell us what he's been told, right?
Yeah,
and then reflect in his own opinion. And I think like Kyle's been very honest in what he said and his interpretation of it. So like I say, I think that's fair enough.
Yeah, so the people who are not...
as he said, like the intent and what he's being told doesn't always match the reality of what happened, and it is regrettable in some cases. But has it gone too far now? Is it reversible? And from what I've seen, the answer is it's unlikely.
So he's
I know that I spent a couple of hours this morning.
Hold on a second. He's the press secretary trying to convey the executive's actions, and there's a little confusion on the clarity of those actions. But let me make the point that Snuff is not represented here. They're the fourth party in this whole mess. And they're the instigators of it because they shot Red Alert's Fortizar that they were using to evacuate. So it's not just any Fortizar, right? It's a very important Fortizar.
Now, I'm being told by the person that talked to you, Gian, that he did ask for structures. But, I mean, as you showed me what you put, I mean, that wasn't very clear. But if there was any other conversations, he's fairly certain that he asked for a list of structures.
Let me press on this issue because I think it's very important. What Red Alert is saying is that they were told everything's fine. If anything happens, let us know, which is a passive thing. And what CVA is saying through you is we said to Red Alert, be proactive and give us a list so no mistakes are made. Those are two very different things. And mistakes were made by Snuff.
As Rocket quite nicely pointed out earlier, I mean, as I said, like I don't remember getting any requests like specifically for a list. However, as Rocket said earlier, the fact that a list was even supposedly needed to know not to shoot our staging Fortizar after it's literally in a Praviblock alliance, that doesn't exactly speak to a lot. Though if you quickly look at the screenshot Twilight Winter posted, so there's Adita saying RA is with RC now. So Adita is one of the CVA leadership. And I do find it odd that we're supposedly allies, even though CVA supposedly now sees us as a Wrecking Crew group, which is their enemy.
I don't see you guys as that at all. That is
but no disrespect for you, Tikal, but it doesn't really matter what you see us as, because I know that you're a cool guy. I know that you're reasonable. The fact is, it's what CVA leadership sees us as.
But there's a ton of gray area here because everything is in transition right now. So it's not as clear as it was before the NIP. People are moving out, people are switching sides, people are coming and going, and so it's not real clear where it's going to settle. And it's funny that CVA allied with Snuff and they did that to defend themselves against Wrecking Crew. I imagine that was the play, right?
I mean, it's very reasonable. I mean, if you look at Snuffed Out and look at what back on Pravi, and to back this up a little bit, if you will forgive me for this.
Sure.
The question, Gian, was that they posed the question to you after the Lantern debacle. That's what I was being told. But anyways, we've been working with Snuffed Out for years. We have a lot of former Pravi members in Snuffed Out. Now, of course, a lot of people look at Snuffed Out as the boogeyman of Eve. They have, if an outsider looking in, Pravi Block eventually was losing this war because our lack of the ability to drop our own supers, to be able to escalate properly to counter RC's escalation. What group is known to drop supers to be able to escalate and do so fairly regularly and decently at that? You would see Snuffed Out. So CVA working with Snuffed Out, I mean, it's very easy for us to look at it and say, oh, we could get decent training. We could work with these guys that have we've worked together before in the past. It's not an end all here. I think it's a possible benefit for us. I apologize for the background. I'm in my police cruiser.
Yeah, it's fine.
Now it comes to the great point. I mean, I'm already in conversation with it. Yes, Edita is a FC in Pravi. He's not going to be the end all say all. Have you ever had one person say that somebody's a bad guy and from another group? Yeah, it happens all the time. But at the end of the day, we have to look at what we want. All right, at the end of the day, you look at APOC. They're not going to shoot us unless we shoot them. And guess what? We don't want to shoot them either. Because APOC at the end of the day is Pravi Block. We're Pravi Block. You have TE that's Pravi Block. You have a lot of these guys that are Pravi Block. And, Gian and those guys. At the end of the day, I'm going to work like hell to make this right. And at the end of the day, you're going to be a unified block because the ultimate goal of all of us is NRDS, Pravi Block, being inside and kicking RC out. So we're each going to go our own way. We have our own missions to build up. But like I said, at the end of the day, is this gone too far? Rocket says no. I say absolutely. Or should we see Rocket say yes? It's gone too far. Yes, I say no. I think that there's nothing because at the end of the day, we are Pravi Block.
Okay, and let's make that clear because we want to just make it clear where your position is. You're saying, look, Red Alert, we're still allies. We're still your friends. This was a mistake. It was not our mistake. It was Snuff's mistake, and we're clearing it up. Stick with us even through this transition. And Rocket X is saying, this just proves you've gone too far and this relationship is broken. And I think that's what Gian is too, right?
Yeah. I don't really think it's...
Well, John, one sec, buddy. So does that mean that Snuff isn't going to come and RF the fort today? That all of RA stuff is in?
Honestly, man, I've been working like...
No, yes or no?
No, I'll be honest with you. I've been working like heck. Marf's been working like heck. And a lot of us have been working like heck in the background to make sure this doesn't happen. But if it does happen, that's just it's gonna piss me off to no other. And that's just besides the point.
I spent a couple of hours this morning of my time in order to spread my version of diplomacy around the place. So the things that have been worked out at the moment, providing the diplomacy has gone the way I hope I put it, the Fortizar won't be reinforced, providing all parties are in the loop with the diplomacy that I put forth this morning.
Well, this is the thing. If that's the case, why is this the first time I'm hearing of it? I'm not sure if Rocket's heard any of this.
Well, I mean, what I have heard of is I watched 25 Snuff Dreads jump within direct range of Sasala out of 9UI earlier today, and Snuff was pre-pinged for the timer. So I haven't heard anything, but I'm seeing everything I need to see to say it's not going to happen.
And just to cover earlier, when it was said that it was Snuff's mistake, I don't put any of this blame really on Snuff for the simple fact that Snuff isn't like from what I've seen, Snuff isn't a very diplomatic entity. They're basically just a rabid dog. They come into a region, they see something to bite, and they bite it. Now, the thing that I think this is pretty much mainly on CVA for the simple fact of you don't bring a rabid dog into an area and then go, oh, why is it shooting my allies?
Well, to be fair, Gian, you've kind of poked them a lot with trying to ping for their stuff.
Well,
you did get the final kill.
No.
Let's we got a situation. Hold on a second, John. We have a situation. We have like 3 or 4 to 1. You guys against Kyle, basically, and there are some other people.
Yeah, we need
to
give Kyle some space to talk because
exactly.
he needs to answer all of the questions from all 3 of us.
Or pose his own. And so we had Spectre 38 jump in there and say some stuff, and then Marf actually as well. I suspect both from Red Alert. So, Kyle, I think you were asked a question, and then you're free to ask your questions, and then we'll wrap up with what's going to happen next. Go ahead, Kyle.
Forgive me. Who do I need to answer in order?
I'm sorry. Maybe there wasn't a question. I thought there might have been. Gian,
I've been working with Jed. Not Jeds. I've been talking with Jeds. I've been talking with Twilight Winter. Been talking with Marf. And, a lot of us want to work together. At the end of the day,
we hear police radio, by the way, mate.
Yeah,
sorry,
I do apologize.
It's all right. It's okay. We'll wait till it's done. It's okay. We can wait. There's no rush.
I'm in the middle of the desert right now. I apologize.
I have to say, by the way, Kyle is like easily one of the most committed CVA members that I've come across in the last decade.
Oh yeah, I've devoted the last better part of 3 years to this. I have my own custom-made CVA suits when I go to meetups in Vegas.
Is it better than Jin's?
Oh, I think so. Everything's tailor-made.
I'll just say this while we wait out the radio a little bit, that after our last meeting, Kyle, you were here on a Sunday show. I believe we talked about Providence. That was about 2 Sundays ago. You guys had a meeting right after that for Provi Block, and apparently it was a very emotional meeting and stuff. So sorry to hear that Providence is having such a tough time and is transitioning to something else if they're not just making this all more modern. But appreciate you coming on the show and trying to represent the point of view of, I guess, notoriously quiet CVA leadership.
I appreciate it. I understand it's almost like going out, if being a conservative on MSNBC. I already know I'm going to get hit pretty hard. That's fine.
Which is a really annoying and sad thing because you're a really cool dude, and this shouldn't. Like you shouldn't be on here trying to defend a bunch of people's decisions that you didn't. That you had no real say in.
It's one of the people that's trying to fix things, right? That's the important thing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. Diplomacy's slow. There's a lot of things we could improve on. What organization doesn't need something to improve on?
Let's just jump to. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Now, what's the question on the table?
So the next thing is, we'll just move to the last portion because I have to wrap up soon. We can continue this talk offline, but I have to jump off. What's next for CVA?
CVA is going to be heading up north. Exactly where, there's been some talk about different systems, but we're going to go probably live over in.
Kyle's in high demand today.
Yeah, we're going to be going up north in probably the Gal Mill faction warfare area. We'll be living up there for a while. We'll be training. We'll be building our own super program. And to eventually, we wish to contest RC in the future. I don't know how long it's going to take. Each group has separated with their own mission. Severance is down over in Legacy Space. They're going to be crabbing. They're going to be PvPing. They're going to be building up. Same with us. We have our own mission up here. We're going to be, training, practicing, building up ourselves for the inevitable. When all these groups come back together to retake Provi. And part of the things that I'm going to make sure I will go to the grave trying to do is to ensure that, the Red Alert guys, because they're going to be going, their ways as well, is that CVA maintains ties with faction warfare. Because ultimately we are always going to be Amarian loyalists, we will continue to bat phone for them. We will continue to help out Red Alert wherever they go, because that's what we should do. Yeah, there's going to be some personality issues, absolutely. But at the end of the day, we cannot allow petty, trivial personality differences interfere with what is important. And what is important to us is Providence. What is important to all of us is NRDS in Providence. And kicking, no offense to Rocket X, kicking these heretics out of our home. Because that is...
We've been asking you to for ages. Please kick us out.
So you'll be back.
Dude, I'm trying.
So CVA will be back. You're just going to strengthen up.
We need to, like I said, as Rocket X even admitted, he was very fascinated and very shocked that we were just pulling out like that. He's like, I thought you guys can still keep going. It's not an is thing. It's nothing else. I saw what I'm analyzing. This is me personally as Kyle seeing that. We're pulling out because we couldn't effectively continue to fight every weekend because you're constantly being able to out-escalate us. We needed to pull back, we need to train up, we need to build up, and we need to reattack you guys with more friends, more allies, and purge this region and get our home back. And you guys are actually being pretty nice. If it was the other side, I would be quite vicious to you guys because I like my home. And
because you're a Marian, yeah.
So is this why the Snuff relationship is causing such an issue between RA and stuff? Is because you guys are going to go live under their super umbrella?
That's Spectre 380.
I mean, I expect very hard. I'll be picking their brains in the future on how to properly deploy supers because they do it a lot. I would like to do it with them, maybe, possibly, so I could train up. We need, and that's one of your guys' biggest complaints about us is, oh, you guys have the supers, you guys have the dreads, you just don't have that confidence to deploy them against us. Well, are you mad for us to actually going out, get that training, get that confidence to come back and fight you guys? I mean, it's a no-brainer because if you guys want us to compete with you guys, we need to do that. And guess what? We're going to do that.
Yeah, I honestly see the need for the move. Just because, as you've said before, you can't build to the level you need to whilst you're under the pressure that we put you under. And that was part of the reason why we went for the nip when we realized that shit was going to fall apart quickly if we didn't. And EQ obviously took the decision that he knew that at the end of the nip, right, ultimately that Provi was being used as a content farm by us, and his decision to pull Provi Block out of Provi was largely because he wasn't happy with Provi continue to exist, but under RC's kind of influence / almost with our permission in a way. And so in some ways, I think the whole pulling out is a strong decision for him, but the problem is that by the time he decided to do it, and the fact that the whole RA thing had kicked off, and the fact that he considered it to be a power grab perhaps, meant that he then cut RA out of those decisions and negotiations and those conversations, which has led to that rift growing, and that's where we are now. So although it was a good decision and the correct decision, I think, on CVA's part to pull out, because it was done so late and without the conversations, without RA being involved in those conversations, it means that the different directions those Provi groups are going in aren't compatible with each other. So Severance has gone to Legacy. They can go do what they want and come back at will. That doesn't interfere with anyone else. But because CVA has gone with Snuff and Snuff is shooting RA, that's where the conflict is. And Snuff really doesn't really have a political mindset. They're here for content. We know for a fact that they're here to try and bait us into a fight, ideally on a fort grid, but if not, they want to dread bomb the supers, RC supers, that is. And that, they are good at it, and they are a threat to us, because if they do catch us with our pants down, and they've done it before, we will bleed supers to them. Even if, we end up demolishing all of their dreads, we would still lose the ISK on that fight, because they would be killing supers. And on Snuff's side, it is just a content thing, and the issue is that CVA itself, although trying to align with Snuff and work with them in the future, doesn't really have the influence to stop Snuff doing what they want. And the whole the thing about it being an accident as well, like Tau and High, right, from Snuff, the main two guys leading that charge, they're not stupid. They know exactly what they're doing. They want to push those buttons, and CVA can't really stop them doing that from what we've seen. I mean, the answer that we'll get will be whether Snuff actually shows up to shoot the Sasala fort later today. And if they do, that's really where you're going to see kind of this relationship either be amendable or not. if that makes sense.
So when does that happen, and what are we looking for?
It happens in, I think it's about an hour and a half.
Something like that, yeah.
What system?
So 90 minutes from now, the Sasala Fortizar, RA Sasala Fortizar comes out of its armor of its field reinforced.
And that's where RA has basically evac'd all their stuff too. So if Snuff shoots it again for like the fourth time, they'll know basically that the whole Diplo thing, despite intentions, whatever they may be, don't actually have any play in this.
Snuff will be the deciding factor in what happens, even though they don't have a horse in the political race, right? So, although RC has pushed a lot of buttons and done a lot over the last year or so, mainly 2 years extensively, but even though we've done all that, really it comes down to Snuff's decision later today as to how this kind of situation develops.
So we're going to see how this plays out.
I've done as much as I can in order to do diplomatic relations, because that's kind of the things that I do. Even though I currently don't have a horse in this race at the moment either, because of what my future is going to be.
What's your future, Murph?
I'm going, as soon as I've dealt with, like, I have this thing where I keep getting distracted by helping other people because they're asking for things, because I've got sinos over here, I've got knowledge of stuff. But once I've sorted my shit, I'm going back to the family that I've had the last year or two. Even though I'm in a holding position at the moment somewhere else.
So you're going to go back to APOC?
No, not to APOC. The crew that I was with, they left APOC, and so did another crew of Australians. So around 70 to 80% of my play people have since left APOC. Like, it's only 2 corporations have left APOC and the Red Alert, but it's like most of my Australian peoples, and so I've made the decision to go back with my original corporation of the Australian Belt Strippers.
Okay, so you're going to be in Warped.
Wow. All right. Let's wrap up right here. So in 1 hour, we're going to see how this story ends and a new story begins. What is Snuff going to do to this Fortizar that is now in an armor timer? Is that right?
Yep.
Because if they attack it again,
armor timer today,
then all diplomacy has been shown to be not successful. And the relationship between CVA and RA is going to be further strained. If they do not attack it, then there's some room for some reconciliation, it looks like. So we'll see what happens in an hour in Sasala.
Yeah, I think if they don't attack it and then they let RA back onto the quote unquote Pravi block slack again because they got booted off that. I think if those two things happen, I think there'll be a chance for some actual reconciliation to happen.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for showing up, especially Kyle for jumping in to this hotspot. Let me adjust my volume there. Thank you, Kyle, for jumping in, and Rocket X for showing up with John as well and Marv. Appreciate you guys. We're going to wrap up the day now and take you over to Ron USMC. So stay tuned for some more streaming.
Thanks for having us. See you.
Yeah,
Take
thanks, guys. Sure.
Marv.
Let me just hit the raid button and then we'll go. You guys have just a few seconds to say goodbye to fans. Don't say anything. That I have to edit out. All right, here's your raid.